Alright, what's up everybody? Now if you're on here last time and were asking some questions and I didn't reply, I apologise. I need to set up a second screen so that I can see all of that stuff while I'm on the live stream. So I'll try and just stop and check to see if anybody's posted any questions this time so that I can interact with you guys a bit more. That's part of the reason why I like to do these live streams. So yeah, I just need to jump back over to my YouTube page, just in the chat box. I know it's going to look a bit weird on the screen, so I'll try not to do it too much. But yeah, anyway, so today I've been playing around with some coils and powered pyramids a little bit more, and I have made some interesting progress that I wanted to share with you guys, because I think this is really important for anybody who's using monsoon coils, really any kind of powered coils where you're inputting a frequency, even with the zappers, the 5 hertz just shaped square wave zappers that I've seen being used with monsoon coils. They're just as appropriate. I've had a few things happen that sort of caused me to think a little more deeply about what was going on with these coils. So what I've found, I'll just bring up my camera here so I can make sure that you guys can see what it would be good for you to see. So I've got my powered pyramid here that I've made, and I've got a pulse width modulator on that, which I'll explain in a second. I've also got one of the monsoon coils here. This is a double dual field monsoon coil that I've wound, just using with a frequency generator as well. Same thing applies through all of these. So basically what was happening was, for these experiments, I'm primarily dowsing using the Bovis scale. So it's just another way to get a gauge of the chi or life force energy, prana, however you want to look at it, that's coming off these devices that we're making, and to some degree the quality of that energy. So it's a frame of reference that has been created to get a gauge of what these devices are doing. Orgone devices, tensor devices, anything that you're making, basically anything you can douse, a leaf off a tree, a human being, it's all relative. But essentially all the Bovis scale is doing is providing a frame of reference for dowsing or for, heart-based readings, however you do it. It's providing a frame of reference to apply some information to. So some people like to use just dowsing. Other people like the actual electronic instruments. I can't remember what they're called right now, but there are electronic instruments that you can purchase that are generally pretty expensive, that get a bit of a read. They read electromagnetism and the like. But I find the Bovis reading works fine, and it is. I find there's a very strong congruence between what I feel in my own energy body and with my own senses, and the Bovis readings that I'm getting. So I'm pretty satisfied that it's an accurate frame of reference to use for this. So anyway, to the point, what I found was with this powered pyramid was that I've just taken some readings on the Bovis chart for this powered pyramid. So before I plugged it in, so before it was charged, before I did any sort of work with it, I just did a reading for it, and that reading was at 650 million Bovis. Okay, so it was quite a high reading anyway for a pyramid. I loaded a lot of stuff into it. There's a lot of crystals and a lot of powdered crystals, tensor rings, golden fire tensor rings, which I think has a fair bit to do with it. That's a really high frequency. So I loaded a lot into it. So I was still surprised that it hit that 650 million on the Bovis scale though by itself. Then what happened was I plugged in the frequency generator, this frequency generator, and ran it at 432 hertz, and at 10 volts. Did another reading on the Bovis scale, and it actually dropped down to about 28,000 from 650 million. So that was a substantial drop, and it was kind of the opposite of what I was expecting to happen, in all honesty. I was kind of expecting it to amp up what was already there, but seemingly it actually far reduced the pyramid's capacity to output energy. I suppose because it was locked into a singular frequency, and there's so much going on with these crystal grids and tensor rings and everything, and even the golden ratio, that phi geometry. It's going to be a very dynamic and very variable frequency that the pyramid is outputting. So that kind of caused me to think a little bit. I went, it's not just as simple as basically inputting power and what would you call it, and amplifying a frequency. So yeah, it kind of made me think a little bit, and I went, okay. So I ordered. What I did then, I actually went back to basics from there. I had a bit more of a look into the 5 hertz zappers that Stephen has been using with his monsoon coils in his powered pyramids for the sucker punch coils. And he was seeming to find that it was the other way around. He was getting up around 10 million Bovis just with the induction orgonite, so it wasn't even powered, and he was getting a better result with the coils. So I went back to the 5 hertz zapper. I had a look at what was going on with those, and I'll just double check no one's posted any questions. No. So what I found with the 5 hertz zappers is that they have a wavelength or a waveform, a square waveform essentially. So if you imagine this line here is neutral, and here we've got positive and negative on the waveform. All the zapper is doing, the 5 hertz zapper, is doing a positive pulse and then clipping it. It's not dropping into a negative, okay? So it's just essentially doing that as a waveform. Now that's found to be really beneficial for healing and removing of parasites from the body and things, because it's providing the body with a positive charge, but it's only half the picture. So in some applications that zapper is going to be really good, and I still need to personally get one and work with it to really understand where its application is. But so moving on from there, I sort of went, okay, well that's successful. Moving on from there, I sort of went to think, well, yeah, I'll just cut to the chase. Basically what I found was instead of going, I'm needing to put a frequency into this powered pyramid and then amplify that frequency, what I'm needing to do is find the frequency, the dominant frequency, or the encapsulating waveform that this pyramid is producing, and I want to resonate the frequency and the power, basically the amplified power that I'm putting into this pyramid. I just want to put more of what the pyramid is already doing into it, so as to get this thing called resonance happening. So basically what resonance is, say there's a waveform like this that is say my pyramid's resonant frequency. So pyramid's resonant frequency, I don't know why I keep trying to write with this thing, but you get the idea. That's the waveform that my pyramid in its totality resonates at. Okay, so what I did to approach that is I said, if I can create a waveform that is the same as that frequency there, I'm essentially creating a second waveform that is going to be coming in and matching this frequency. And because, I don't know if you call it a law, but basically my understanding of resonance is when you've got two waveforms that resonate or meet and do the same thing, there's an effect of amplification by quite a large magnitude. It's not just a 1 + 1 = 2. It's like a 1 + 1 + 1 = a billion sort of thing. So it's a massive, when you have things resonating like that, so two waveforms, or doing the same thing in the same space, you have a massive amplification of whatever that waveform is producing. Okay, so that can be seen scientifically with the traditional electrical understanding. It can also be said for, it's probably another way to see why the more people there are focusing on an intention, say in meditation, say there's a group of 100 people focusing on love or peace or whatever they are, focusing on the same thing in meditation. Whatever they're focusing on in meditation, and there's 100 of them, it's going to be amplified times 100 at least. So it's, what I'm trying to say here is, if one person was focusing on world peace, it's going to have an effect. If two people are focusing on world peace, it's going to have an exponential effect. And if 100 people are focusing on world peace all at the same time, it's going to be a phenomenal amplification effect. Okay, so the more the merrier, basically. So what I'm getting at with all of this is that with these powered devices, these coils, everything in existence, from my understanding, has a resonant frequency. Okay. Now, for living organisms, that's probably going to be variable, and a little more, a fair bit more so than solid objects. Now, part of finding the resonant frequency of a solid object is where is its placement in space. So, let's say this coil resonates at, just to make it simple, resonates at 100 hertz. Here, if I move this coil over here, it might resonate at 102 hertz. So its place in space and time affects the resonant frequency of this. So it's going to resonate at 100 hertz here. 5 seconds later over here, it's going to resonate at 102 hertz, as an example. So it's very variable and based on that point in time, space, and the density and configuration, all of these different factors that go into the resonant frequency of an object or a thing. It all has an effect. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind. If hopefully you grasp and can apply what I'm communicating here, if you work with these coils, if you say set up a coil in a powered pyramid or even just by itself, and it's here, and you find the resonant frequency, which I'll explain how to do soon, that's going to work here. If you then move that pyramid or that powered coil outside and run the same frequency through it, it's going to be slightly different, and you need to recalibrate to get the best effect. Okay, it's going to still be far greater if you have it in the ballpark of its resonant frequency, but yeah, it's just that fine tuning if you really want to push the envelope there with what you can achieve with these things. So hopefully that's making sense so far. I'm still integrating all of that knowledge into my own brain as well. So basically what I'm finding, to give you an idea here, I'll start with this coil. This coil, standalone, not powered, just as it was with the Golden Fire tensor ring in it, and not plugged into the frequency generator. What did that have? That came in at about 12 million, okay, on the Bovis scale. Now, when I switched this on and just ran 432 hertz through it, it didn't change much. I actually think it got a little bit less again, which was really interesting. Now, I doused for the resonant frequency of this coil, and that came through to be 1,611 hertz. at so that was the resonant frequency without going into point 00 whatever that these generators can't do anyway. So the 1611 hertz or 1.611 megahertz is this coil's resonant frequency, or pretty close to it. I also found the voltage that was running through these had a pretty substantial effect on the overall Bovis scale reading. So the quality of the energy that was being emanated. The voltage made a big difference as well, and I could physically feel the difference when dialing through the voltage. So yeah, this one was at 1.611 megahertz and running 8.9 volts through it had the best effect. Now, when I found that resonant frequency of this coil, that jumped the Bovis reading from 12 million up to 14.7 billion. Okay, so that's a big difference. That's a huge difference. Just for a coil resonating, inputting a resonant frequency, so inputting that waveform that's matching the waveform that this object naturally vibrates at, we're getting that amplification, and we're going from the millions to the billions as far as the chi that this is putting out, the life force energy that this is creating, okay, in the environment. So, I mean, that just there makes your humble powered orgone pyramid into just a whole other ballgame, all right? So if you can just get yourself even a cheap frequency generator, these things cost $80 built. You can get frequency generators around $12, just little hobby ones, they'll do the job. Let's say $20 you spend, and you can be jumping the effectiveness of your powered pyramid from in the millions, the low millions, to the billions, okay? And that's just with that. I should mention again that that 14.7 billion on the Bovis scale is that's up in the cosmic realm, so it's way out of the spiritual realm. That's right up into the cosmic realm, way up there, and that's just the coil. This isn't even in orgonite or anything, so I don't think I need to say any more on that one. One thing worth mentioning is, though, these monsoon coils, which I've mentioned in previous videos, if you want to use these for healing, you want to pair them with crystals and geometry and things like that, because just powering them by themselves, they are very strong, but they're not very subtle, let's put it that way. They have a really strong effect, so just bear that in mind. If you want to just make a coil and power it, you're going to have a hard time being in that field for very long. So yeah, so that's that one. Now I'll jump over to the powered pyramid. I don't know if you can see this here. I'll give it my best go. This, where are we at? Sorry guys, this one here. Yeah, so I don't know if you can really see that. You sort of can, just there. All right, so that's running at 1.24. Yeah, I tried. Anyway, you get the idea. It's one of these. If anyone's interested, just post a comment. I'll put the link where you can buy these off eBay. This is $12. So what this is this is running my powered pyramid at the moment. That is what is called a pulse width modulator. So essentially what it is it's a frequency generator like this one. So it's producing a waveform or a frequency. So yeah, it's essentially, I'll do another drawing. I've got my powered pyramid. Okay, from that powered pyramid, we've got here pulse width modulator, which is what that little blue lit up box is. And then from there, I'm just running that from a laptop charger, and that is a That's a 19.5 volts, so it's pretty high voltage, but it's not in the dangerous realm of voltage by any stretch of the imagination. So, and that's just plugged into the wall at 240, okay, 240 volts. I gotta figure out this. Anyway, at the wall. There we go. Yeah, so that's essentially what's running here. It's really simple, just simple positive and negative in our laptop charger, pulse width modulator to powered pyramid. So anyone can do this with a little bit of thought. So the difference between this and, say, a standard frequency generator is that it generates that waveform, but then on top of that, you can set what's called the duty cycle. So the duty cycle is, in essence, when you have a waveform that, say, this is the neutral line, where there's no positive or negative current. So you have a waveform, and when you're setting the duty cycle, it's setting for how long when you hit the top of this waveform here in the positive. When you hit the top of that waveform there in the frequency, because frequency is how many of these happen per second, so it's usually cycles per second. So let's say at the moment I'm running 1,200 and 1.24 kilohertz. So that is, I think, 10,240 cycles per second. So that's, of these waves, that's 10,240 of those little waves happening every second, okay? So that's the frequency. So then what we're doing with the duty cycle, with this pulse width modulator here, is we're sort of shaping or telling the unit how long to stay on this upward curve here. So you can run it at that, say 10,000 cycles per second, but then you say and it works in percentage. So and what I've got this set to is at 37% on the duty cycle. So it's set to a 37% duty cycle. Sorry, I'm trying to make this as simple as I can. I'm still learning it myself. So what you have here is essentially I'm telling this machine to say 30 cent for if from, here we go, this will be easier. All right, so from here to here is the top of the waveform. That's the peak of the wave, and that entire peak equates to 100%. So with the duty cycle, I'm going to say for 37% of that time, when you're on that peak of that wave, or have I confused myself a little bit here? Okay, let's say that again. Of the time that's available to be in the top of this wavelength here, I want you to use 37% of that. So essentially what it's doing is, oh dear. So I've gone and confused myself now. I had it clear in my head, and then as soon as I try and verbalise it, it's all over the shop. So if there's an electrician or somebody who comes across this and can comment a far clearer explanation on that, I would appreciate it. I might even do an update once I wrap my head around it a little bit. But essentially what we're doing is we're setting the frequency here, the frequency, so how many of those waves happen per second, and then we're saying how long those waves happen for with the duty cycle, basically. So it's a little bit contradictory in my mind. That's how I've understood it would work. So I think what is happening is you're getting, with the duty cycle, you're getting longer or shorter peaks, and then less of a trough. Okay, so it's spending more time in that peak frequency if you put the duty cycle up, and if you put this duty cycle down, you're getting a longer time in that rest trough. Okay, yeah, so that's what it is. Sorry. So So just to explain it again, you've got your frequency, which is happening, let's say we're running at 10 hertz per second, so we've got 10 of these waveforms happening every second. Okay, and then if we increase our duty cycle, we're going to get a longer peak and then a shorter trough, because it still has to fit those 10 cycles into 1 second. So it's just going to take from the trough and add to the peak, or it's going to take from the peak and add to the trough. Okay, so essentially I guess the benefit of having one of these pulse width modulators is that you can further dial in or shape that waveform a little bit. Now, what relevance that has to the resonant frequency of an object, I don't yet know. But what I found is dialing in that duty cycle up to the effectiveness even more. It wasn't as substantial as finding the resonant frequency, but it certainly helped. Yeah, there was still a magnitude of in the hundreds of thousands to the millions difference changing that waveform, the duty cycle there. So I hope I didn't confuse you guys too much with that. I sort of had to figure it out properly in my own mind as well. I've only just sort of started playing with this stuff today. So yeah, essentially what we are doing here with this pyramid now is I've gone this pyramid sitting where it is in space-time, primarily in space, is resonating at, or it has a resonant frequency of 1,240 hertz, or simplified 1.24 kilohertz. That's close enough to the resonant frequency to get the effect that I want. As I said, we could dial that in more with points, but that requires more expensive equipment that I don't yet have. So for now, 1.24 kilohertz is the resonant frequency of this pyramid at this point in time, and where it's sitting at the moment on my bench. And so we've got that waveform happening. I've then dialed that in to say we actually want larger troughs and shorter peaks to get a more effective beneficial energy out of this device. And what that did was it went from the base not powered, 650 million bovis. I then just started playing with different frequencies higher up in the spectrum to get better results. So the best one I got, then I started at 2,675 hertz running into this. That got 1.5 billion on the bovis scale. I then found 3,040 hertz, knocked it up to 50 billion on the bovis scale. And I've triple checked this because I didn't believe that it was getting that much. It certainly feels like it's getting that much. Okay, so just even that frequency not resonating with the pyramid, just getting closer to the range that we were after, knocked the bovis reading up to 50 billion for this powered pyramid. Okay, then when I found the resonant frequency of this pyramid, which was at the 1024 or the 1.24 kilohertz at 8.4 volts, which helped dial it in even more. It got up to 79.4 billion on the bovis scale. So, I mean, that to me is mind-boggling. Like, that's nearly at the top of the new reading chart, which I'll show you guys. I've got it here. Yeah, so this is the new bovis chart that I use for dowsing. So, you know, where this pyramid's operating at now, and if you want to check it yourself, go back at that point in the video and douse it and have a look. It's sitting at 79.4 billion. Okay, so that's bumping up. That's bumping up here in the top tier, which is sitting around. You know, it's getting up around the central sun, ascended masters, divine source frequency. Apparently, that's. I mean, my physical body isn't capable of necessarily holding that frequency at the moment, so I'm feeling a lot of resistance and stuff coming unstuck running this pyramid now, which is really nice. But yeah, it's right up there. So with that, I kind of highly suggest you guys, if you've got a powered pyramid or if you've got some coils around, get yourself a frequency generator if you don't have one. Douse out. If you want to learn dowsing, just have a look on YouTube. It's really simple. I've sort of done attunements over the years to different places and things, and so I do have a lot of trust and confidence in my dowsing now because I've used it so much over the years for different things. So it's a really useful tool to have when you're working with this kind of technology, because we don't yet necessarily have the physical technology in the form of electronics to get these readings. So dowsing with frames of reference like the Bovis scale is really helpful when you're building these things. Yeah, so I just highly suggest that you check that out if you haven't already. Have a douse for you know the tools that you've got, even your cloud busters, or sorry, your tower busters that you're making, any old orgonite pyramids you've got around. Douse and see what the Bovis reading is of those. Any decent one should at least be over 30,000. Ideally, you know, up around the million at least, to start getting some really nice sort of energies happening there. Yeah, so grab yourself a frequency generator, douse for the resonant frequency of the object. So how I do that, once I'm tuned in, which is going to be relevant, it's going to be, relevant to each individual's experience, how they tune in for themselves. But yeah, once you go through that process, it's relatively easy to figure it out. Just have a Google, have a YouTube, you'll learn very quickly. Tune in, douse, what is the Bovis reading of this coil? And then, you know, is it greater than 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, just or less than 1 million, 2? So you zero in on what the Bovis reading is, or as close as you need for your own mind to be satisfied with the reading you've got. Douse it for that, and then run a resonant frequency through it. So you can say, you need to find the resonant frequency. So you can say, what is the resonant frequency of this coil? Is it greater than 500 hertz, 600 hertz, 700 hertz, less than 1,000 hertz? You know, just work your way through there. You do need to have a bit of a frame of reference developed, but as long as it makes sense in your mind clearly, you should get a clear answer. So yeah, if you can douse, great. Grab yourself a coil and a frequency generator. Even better, a pulse width modulator. You can dial it in even more and give it a go. It's just, you know, it's the difference between spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a huge pyramid or a huge device that you may be able to achieve the same thing with $20 worth of resonance and crystals. So, and you know, there's always a place for that, for that bigger gear. You get obviously a bigger field of effect. That's actually probably one thing worth mentioning too. There was not the field of effect that I got from this pyramid, unpowered. I can't remember what it was. It was around 3 or 4 meters in effective range. The I guess you could say the toroid field, or the energy field, or the bioelectric energetic field that this pyramid was creating was around 3 to 4 meters, depending on where it was in its cycle. With that resonant frequency running through it, that toroid field jumped up to 23 meters in radius, so 23 meters wide, as opposed to 8 meters wide. So that's a huge area of effect increase as well there. So yeah, I just thought I'd do a quick video for you guys to explain those findings. I hope that's really helpful. If you see anything that you can add to this, please feel free to message me or comment, and we can continue discovering together. But for me, that was a really nice, important discovery that I made. And yeah, I'm really just grateful to be able to experience these frequencies. So yeah, get in there, give it a go for you guys, for yourself. And as always, I send out my love to all of you, and thanks for watching. Peace.